What's up, everybody? My name's Tyler. Me and my buddy Eric own a small business called Trail & Co. And today we're going to be doing a project that I've wanted to do for a really long time, and that is making a snorkel for my Jeep XJ. Alright, so first things first, there's a few questions I bet some of you guys have. 1, why do a snorkel? Do you really need it? I'm going to answer that. 2, why don't you do a cowl intake? It's like the best option. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you exactly why not to do that. And 3, why don't you just buy a snorkel? There's a million of them out there. You're absolutely right. There's a really big reason that I don't want to do that. So let's get started. All right, so why do we need a snorkel in the first place? For starters, the reason I want a snorkel is not the reason that most people want a snorkel. It's not because I go through deep water, even though I have, and I've gotten water in my intake before. It's something I don't do often. It's something I try very much not to do. I don't like deep water. I like rocks and mountains and stuff. But my answer to number 1 actually kind of involves my answer to number 2. Because my current intake setup in this Jeep is not stock, because I tried to do a cowl intake, and I'll explain what that is. And because of how I've left it since then, my IATs are super high, and the engine really isn't happy about it, and that's something I want to fix ASAP. So let me show you what I did so you get a better idea. Alright, so this is my engine bay. First thing you'll notice is that it is absolutely hideous and dirty. Well, it's not a show truck. I don't know what to tell you, it's hard to keep these things clean. Second thing you might notice is that I don't have stock airbox. I have a battery instead of the stock airbox. So let's talk about what happened here. So back when I first did my dual battery setup, I needed to get rid of the stock airbox so that I could put the battery in its place. So I figured while I was doing that, why don't I do a cowl intake? It'll solve my need for a snorkel. I'll get nice cold fresh air, and I won't need to have anything attached to the side of the truck, because to be honest, I actually don't really like the look of snorkels too much. So that's what I did. And here is what remains of my cowl intake. So for those of you that don't know, the cowl intake is when you route the intake across the top of the engine, you go through the firewall, and behind the firewall, right where that black tape is one big empty plenum, okay? This is where your truck's AC gets fresh air from. On the other side, so on the driver's side of the truck, fresh air comes in right through these vents. It travels across the plenum into your AC, which effectively makes this a snorkel. And a lot of people opt to use it that way. So I did that. I didn't buy the Thor intake. What I did was I kind of built my own with a Spectre inline filter, and I made a little adapter that went through the firewall. It's not there anymore. And it worked perfectly. But I think one thing a lot of people really understate is just how loud the engine is when you do that. You'll see on the forums, oh, yeah, that adds a little bit of engine noise, but it's fine. Listen, guys, I don't know what to say. I love the sound of my engine, trust me. It was horrible. It was so freaking loud in the cab. It literally sounded like the engine was inside the cab with me. Even at idle, you were just listening to that hiss sound from the throttle body. It was just too much. I couldn't do it. So that didn't last long. I took it out. Basically, I just disconnected it. I got rid of the little adapter that I made, and this is where it is now. So I've made the world's worst cold air intake of all time. This is a hot air intake, and this is how it's been for a couple years now. So that answers question 1 and question 2. But what about question 3? Why don't I just buy one of the 100 different snorkels that are online for $90? 2 big reasons. Reason number 1, they are absolute crap. Every snorkel online for this truck is absolute Chinese crap. They're all the same. They all have different brand names, but it's the exact same product. I've seen them in person. My business partner, Eric, with the blue Jeep that you guys have seen, he has one on his truck. They are absolute crap. Sorry, Eric. Now, before you guys hop in the comments and say, oh, Tyler, what about the ARB Safari, whatever? Trust me, I would love to get the ARB Safari snorkel, but they don't make it anymore. And if you want it, you're going to pay $450, $500 plus for a snorkel, which is just insane. It's just a piece of plastic. It's nothing crazy. And I don't want to do that. So I'm really only left with 3 options. Buy a crappy Chinese one, shell out the money for the ARB Safari if I can find one, make one myself, or I guess secret option number 4, get another one for another truck that might fit, and I don't feel like doing that. I don't like option 1 or option 2 because of this. This bad boy is a 4.7 stroker motor that's going in that truck. And I'm not done building it yet, and we're gonna do a whole video on this, so don't worry. But this motor is no joke. This is gonna make over 300 horsepower. That's a ported head. Those are LS valves. There's big old oversized pistons in here. It's got a cam. This thing is nasty. And because of all that goodness, I need one of these. This is a BBK 62mm throttle body. So this is a bigger throttle body than the stock intake. Why do you need this? Well, because this 4.7 stroker moves a lot more air than the stock 4-liter. This thing needs to breathe or else it's going to choke and it's not going to make power. And what worries me is if you look at those crappy snorkels that are on Amazon and eBay, they are super tiny. Like the actual diameter of the snorkel is super small. You look at any other truck, Toyotas, other Jeeps, everything, like they have huge snorkels, plenty of volume for air, but for whatever reason, the snorkels that they make for the Jeep are like the tiniest little thing ever. And I just don't trust it. I've tried to figure out exactly how big it is. Oh, is it bigger than this? Does it make sense? Blah, blah. It's not worth it. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do it the right way, and we're gonna make our own. I'm gonna take a page out of the Australian guy's book, and we're gonna make it out of stainless steel tubing, and it's gonna be awesome. All right, so that's it. We're making a snorkel. What do we do first? I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do first, which is probably not what most people are gonna do. First, I'm gonna tell you the plan for routing this. What I'm planning on doing here is, I literally kind of just want to take this, flip it around, run it out past the brake booster. I'm going to try to offset it so that it passes the brake booster and has a straight shot out the side and misses the stock windshield wiper reservoir. One annoying thing about all of the other snorkel options is that you need to get rid of your stock windshield wiper fluid reservoir because it goes in like right here because that's where the stock airbox was, but we don't have a stock airbox. So I'm going to do my best to kind of bring it around this way, keep my stock fluid reservoir, come out right here where I have a nice open space. I'm going to move my computer. I have like a custom mount I made for it, as you can see, because of my dual battery, but that's going to have to go. No big deal. So the stainless steel tubing I bought for this project is 2.5 inches. I came to that number because 62mm, which is the intake size, converted to inches, is 2.44 inches. So I said, okay, next size up, 2.5 inch pipe, very common. So I got that. So here's a piece of that 2.5 inch stainless steel tubing. And the next issue that I'm worried about is once we bring the tube to the outside of the fender here, it's actually going to protrude quite a bit. So it's going to be somewhere around here. And as you can see, it's actually sticking out almost as far as my fender flare. From above, it's actually sticking out farther than the flare by the time you get to the back of the flare and the flare thins out. I don't really love that. One thing you'll notice that the Australian guys do is they actually have this tube, the way it comes out as an angle like this, so that it spends as much time tucked into the truck as it can until it gets out here. The only issue with doing that is that the hole that you need to cut in the fender, instead of now just being a circle, becomes a very long oval shape like that this then sits in. So I'm not a master fabricator. People have been routing pipes through the side of their cars and cutting perfect holes for 100 years. I just have never done that, and I don't know exactly the right way to do it. And I really don't want to mess it up because this is actually a brand new fender that I just had painted and I put on the truck because I crashed this truck in January. So I really don't want to mess this up. So I'm going to do what I know how to do best, which is going to be 3D scanning the truck, 3D modeling my intake onto that 3D scan, which is then going to allow me to get the intersection point between this pipe and this fender as a perfect curve, which I can then print out as a template, put on the side of the truck, and cut out, and it should be like laser perfect. That's my plan. Is it extra? Yes, absolutely. Is it way too complicated? Yes, absolutely. But this is just what I know, so I'm using the skills that I already have. So I'm gonna get the scanner set up. We're gonna scan this truck. I'm going to show you a little bit what that looks like. Then we're going to go over to the computer and we're going to start modeling. Another cool thing about doing this as a 3D model is it's going to allow me to perfectly measure the bends and everything for when I fab up this snorkel. So both the hole that I'm cutting in the truck and the snorkel itself should be perfect with very minimal tweaking or like prototyping. So we'll see. Again, I've never done this before, but let's see how it goes. So what I'm doing here is just applying some 3D scanning spray. Basically the scanner has a hard time seeing stuff that's black. So the spray makes it white, and then it actually evaporates and doesn't leave any sort of residue or anything. So in like an hour, it's completely gone. So really useful when you're trying to scan something that's hard for the scanner to pick up. Alright, so I just loaded in our 3D scan here as an STL file. This software is called Rhinoceros 5, if anyone's interested. Probably not the best software for what I'm trying to do here, but it's what I'm most comfortable with, so that's what we're going to use. So right off the bat, I can see here the body line on the fender. I'm going to use that as my level point, I think. I'll start with the fender and we'll work from there. There it is. So now our model is more or less oriented to our axes, and we could start modeling. I think what I'm going to do is make myself a little toolkit of pieces that I can just kind of put together in here and see how they go together. I went outside, I measured the tubing I have. It looks like it has an 8-inch bend radius, so I'm going to be able to pretty much replicate the bends perfectly. Alright, so now I've got a straight piece, a 45-degree bend, and a 90-degree bend. So we can really just take these and start messing around. So now, I guess is the first real decision to make. Do we keep this level with the body line, which would be about there? Or does this start to come up like this, so it meets somewhere closer to the bottom of the A-pillar? We can model up both scenarios and see which one we like. So right now, though, what we're dealing with is this is colliding with the side of the body. Look, you see that? See where it comes through right there? That's no good. Now, I think this problem is kind of solving itself here, guys, because I don't know if there's a way that we can really bring this down straight, right? Because it brings us all the way out here by the time we're low enough to connect to this guy, which puts us way out of alignment. Unless we have two bends. I mean, we might need to have two bends to do it like that. Okay, this is just to visualize, right? So let's kind of fake it for now so we can get a feel of what it looks like, and then we'll do the other one, and then we can pick. So now, let's do our other version, where instead of going with the body line, we prioritize getting the pipes to meet up at the right spot. So the issue we run into here is that now, since we're still at a 45, we're not perfectly matching this angle anymore. So this pipe is going to have to get cut at a little bit less than a 45. So again, the A-pillar is curved, so you're not going to get a perfectly matching piece out of a straight line. I mean, the prominent feature here, if you're looking at the front, is this windshield bezel. So if I can make it look right as far as the windshield bezel goes, it might look a little better. So that would be like something like that. Alright, so I think we have a decision here to make. Alright guys, so there's been a little bit of a development here. What we're putting on top of this snorkel is a pre-cleaner. It's called the Cyclone by Snorkel Upgrade, and we're going to talk a lot more about that later. But I got it in the mail today, and this is what it looks like for the record. It's kind of this mushroom shape. But one thing I didn't realize just from the photos was that this thing's actually pretty freaking big. When I held it up against the tubes I had bought, it honestly looks kind of ridiculous. So I modeled it real quick just to give you guys an idea. So yeah, that's what we would be. This is what we would be working with if we stuck with a 2.5-inch tube. So I think we're going to have to pivot here and increase that tube size. So here's what we'd be working with if we went to a 3.5, which is what the inlet size of the pre-cleaner is. I think this looks a lot better, to be honest. I spoke with Isaac over at Snorkel Upgrade. He said that we should be fine with upgrading this tubing side with air velocity and all that. And again, I'll explain why that's important later with this pre-cleaner. But for now, this is actually looking pretty good. So The next big decision that needs to get made is whether we are keeping this thing parallel with the ground or parallel with the hood. I did a poll on Instagram. A lot of you guys answered. I think like 60 people answered, which is awesome. And it was a pretty tight race between the two options, but in the end, parallel with the hood did get the win. So this is what parallel with the hood would look like instead of parallel with the ground. I know it's not a huge difference. A lot of people are probably like, what the hell's wrong with you? But this is what we're working with. I'm okay with this. I think this looks good. I think this is what we're going to go with. So the next step really is just going to be fine-tuning this fitment here. So one thing I did was I've kind of come out of the engine bay at an angle instead of keeping this parallel with the side of the truck. Basically what that does is from above, now you can see, here's our tube. Ooh, here's our tube in yellow. Now you can see that up here by the fender, we're not sticking out past the fender anymore. It's more of a gradual increase out the side. What this is going to do is it's going to mean that we have to cut a really long oblong hole in the fender, but that's okay because I think this is the right move just to help protect the tube and keep everything tight to the body, etc. What's going on, guys? We are making some really awesome progress on our custom snorkel for the XJ here. So we increased the pipe diameter to 3.5 inches. We tweaked the shape a little bit so it really matches the body lines perfectly. We took everyone's advice and we matched this line here, this horizontal portion, with the top of the hood, so those are parallel now. And we kind of changed where the pipe actually comes into the engine bay, made this section straight, that way we can use a hole saw and just cut a straight hole through the side of the truck, and then everything's going to work out right. So my main concern now was how to translate this shape to real life. Making sure that we get every single bend and piece here welded together perfectly so that it matches, especially because we're going to be printing out a template. And we're going to use that template to cut the hole in the fender so that it perfectly matches the shape so that there's no gaps. So to do that, I actually made this fixture here. We're going to 3D print this out, and we're going to be able to lay each of our pipe sections into this fixture. It's going to line up everything perfectly. We could tack weld it in place, and that's going to get us our perfect snorkel. Alrighty, another fast forward in time here. It's actually like 2 months later because I got really busy. So anyway, next thing we need to do is figure out how we're going to translate this exact location of the snorkel onto the fender so that we get the cut right. So there might be better ways to do this, but what I did was basically I intersected the snorkel and the fender, right? Which basically just means get a curve where they touch. So that's this guy here. It's in multiple pieces because there was 3 sections of the snorkel, but anyway, here's our curve. So this is the exact cutout that needs to get made onto the fender in order to locate the snorkel. So now what I did was I took this shape and I made some reference points, right? So I drew this line down to the crease on the fender here, and this line down to the crease on the fender there. And then I drew 2 more lines along the surface. See how they kind of curve along the surface of the fender, right? Over to the corner of this panel. So what I can do now is I can kind of unwrap this shape and print it out. So, right? So that would give us something like this. So you can see here's like the original curves, and I kind of unwrapped it so that it's flat, more or less. It's not going to be perfect, but it's close. So you get a shape like this, and now I get 3 reference points. So if I print this out on paper, right, I take this point, I stick it on the corner of the body, and then I make sure this point is touching the edge of the fender, and this point is touching the edge of the fender. It should be perfect and should be in the exact spot. And now I have my perfect drill point for my hole saw on the outside, right? As well as the shape of the cutout. So I've done that. I've printed that out, so I have that template now. So that covers me for the outside of the fender, right? But I need to locate the drill hole on the inside, right? So what I want to do is I've got my drill hole here. I've got my drill hole inside. If I take a hole saw with a really long pilot bit and I drill perfectly through here and I drill perfectly through there, now I can just run that hole saw in and it's going to make this perfect shape through the fender. And then all I really need to do is manually cut the rest of this long bit. So I don't think I'm gonna make a template for this side because I can kind of see, you can see the body, there's this this crease here, and then there's these two dimples. I think with these marks, I can more or less just kind of eyeball where that point right there is. So I'm not going to bother making a template for that. What I did do, though, is I did make a little bracket. So I'm going to 3D print this. This clamp, we're going to drill through the body here and here. We're going to put some riv nuts, and then we're going to use this clamp to hold on to the base of the snorkel. And this is how it's going to get mounted into the engine bay. That's pretty much it, guys. I do need to kind of figure out what's going to happen here as far as like buying some elbows and stuff to make the intake work. Not really worried about that right this second. I think we are pretty much ready to take this into the garage and start doing some work. I'll be honest, I'm kind of terrified of making this hole, especially because this Jeep crashed. The Jeep crashed. The idiot driver of the Jeep, which is me, crashed it about a year ago, and this is a brand new fender with brand new paint. It came out really nice, so I'm about to cut into the brand new fender, and I don't know, I obviously I haven't done it before, so this is going to be kind of a proof of concept. One thing I'm a little worried about is I'm not just going to have a raw edge cut into the truck, right? I'm going to use some edge trim to kind of clean it up and make it look nice. That's going to add some thickness here, as well as there's going to be Raptor liner on the snorkel itself, so that's going to add thickness. So my actual cutout is going to need to be a little bit bigger than what's here, but I think what's ultimately going to happen is I'll cut it out exact, and then I can kind of fine tune it by hand afterwards, and that's the plan. And it's just going to be a matter of taking it slow and being accurate. So I think next time you see me, we're going to be in the garage. So here we go.